Hey, welcome back. I'm excited for the demo tonight. So in Colorado, if you're in the South, you're already into summer probably, but in Colorado, we're right in the middle of spring, basically. And the clouds as I drive around have just been amazing. We've gotten a lot of rain, actually, a lot more than normal. And the big clouds, especially tonight, actually, are fantastic outside. And so I'm inspired to paint some clouds. I'm going to be painting an 8x10 tonight on the Jack Richardson pre-primed canvases. Link is down below. Hey, I want to remind you too, if you're new to this channel and you don't have my critique list, follow the link down below in the description. I have a nice critique checklist that I use, and I still find it valuable that when I look at these paintings, I've got these paintings up here. I'm going to have to sign them and varnish them, photograph them, and have a sale here pretty soon, actually. So stay tuned for that. But I will use that self-critique checklist to go through and remind myself of what's important and not forget some of the things that are important when we look at our work. We need to be objective when we look at our work as much as possible. Time does that too, so having them sit up on the shelf here and dry gives me a little break from them too, and then I can assess them a little bit more objectively using that criteria. So you can click on the link below, get that checklist, and hopefully that helps you. Well, without further ado, let's get to it. I'll switch over here in my camera. And here's my scene. This is going to be a jumping off point, right? I like these clouds. I like these kind of pillowy, fluffy clouds you get, how they just hang in the sky. I think that's really neat. The land is going to be our anchor tonight. Secondary thing, we're going to really paint the skyscape. I didn't do any preliminary drawing tonight. I do start paintings differently a lot. I don't have a set recipe that I use when I paint. I kind of let the scene and what I'm trying to paint speak to me. I think that's important. If you feel more comfortable kind of having a routine and steps that you go through, that's fine too, I guess. But I want to teach you guys that there's multiple ways you can do it. There's no right way. Don't be afraid. Oil paint is a very forgiving medium, and we can have fun with it, and you can do it, and all that. I'm using Gamblin's Galca gel for my medium tonight. I just have a little squirt of that. I think I'm going to go kind of with a warmed up ochre. And the reason is that I do like a little ochre in the sky. And while this isn't really going to be what shows through, it will warm up some of those tones a bit here. I've got a lot of transparent, terps and stuff in here. So the land, I don't, I want the land to be kind of a little more interesting than this flat shape. So I'm going to put some trees and such. And in fact, way back there might even be some far off trees. So I'm going to make this up a little bit. I do want to design a bit with these clouds. So I'm going to make one of these, my star up here. And what I'm going to do is just kind of get my drawing in place. I like how these clouds generally have a flat bottom to them. And so I may as well try to get a little representational with this cloud here. Clouds also are in perspective, or linear perspective as well. I'll talk a little bit more about that. I kind of also like how some of these clouds overlap. That creates some spatial relationships, I guess. I don't want those to be exactly the same. They're pretty close, aren't they? Maybe I'll make this one a little smaller, actually. That's what we'll do. It's kind of unforgiving to wipe on this surface here. You can see it stains it a little bit. It's fine, but erasing can be maybe a little bit tougher. So when you have clouds that are overlapping, then it clearly tells your viewer that, hey, this one's in front of this one, and maybe there's another one in front of that one. I think I'm gonna bring this little potato cloud over here, and I included it just because it's a potato. Now, I kind of like to have these shapes connect somehow. I might need to do some more work on that. Probably bring some of this. I like this cloud in the upper right-hand corner too, just as more of a dark. But I'm working on really design right now is what I'm really thinking about more than anything. As you go further back here, you start to see, some other little cloud shapes. And I'm just going to indicate these as they get further back by the horizon. They get smaller and smaller. So that's your linear perspective thing. And I'm trying to connect some of these shadows in here. That's what these lines are about. These clouds are going to be pretty small. They're individual little marks way off in the distance there. Gives me kind of a picture here. And I think, there's some little cues here, little bits of cloud. So I think that's a start. Now, You know, one thing that's fascinating about these clouds is that, you know, some of the areas in the cloud are, you know, definitely in the shadow. So I'll try to sketch a little bit of that right here. And in this one, I've got kind of a rounded shape here. Remember, these have volume. It's just like anything else. If you were painting a vase or a ball or flower or whatever, you know, these have volume to them. So, you know, don't forget that. Light plays on them in very mysterious ways too, which makes clouds really fun to paint, I think. So at least for some of these that are in this picture here, I'm going to get a little bit of that design going on of the light part versus the shadow part. And again, I chose this warm color here to start painting in just because I want a little bit of that warmth to show through these clouds. It'll warm up the whole scene. I'm not quite sure what to do with those little clouds there yet, honestly. They're going to be more standout because of their highlight than their shadow shapes, but we'll leave them there. Actually, I think I might make these trees a little bigger here in the foreground, something like that. And then this row in the background is I'll push that back a little bit more. Okay, yeah, that feels pretty good. I like that. Okay, nature sketches. Good evening to you. Welcome from Pennsylvania. So Kat's given us some science here behind why the flat bottoms are. At the altitude where the rising humid air reaches and it's cut off on my screen here just the way I'm viewing this. Sorry, Kat. Anyway, go read Kat's comment. She's telling you how that works, the science behind it. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wipe off some of this. Try not to obliterate my drawing too much, but I don't want too much of that warm paint, you know, mixing in with my colors. So I know my general drawing. I'm not too worried about that. And this, although that might look scary to you, I can still tell where my drawing is. All right, so you clean my palette off here. Basically, a couple of things I've noticed with clouds. One is that the edges of the clouds tend to be a little darker and grayer, I've noticed. I think this is because the form is turning away, you know, and clouds are just water vapor. If you remember that, I think it's become one of those things that just by knowing that, I've been a little more aware and being able to get some more form. And so I'm going to start here by scrubbing in some of this. I'm going to keep it kind of thin, I think, probably to start here. And I just use that chromatic black from Gamblin'. Love that stuff. And white to mix myself kind of a neutral gray. And when you look up here, on my palette, it looks pretty neutral, right? When I look up here compared to that warm underpainting drawing that I put in, that looks really blue. So that goes back to that whole thing of temperature being relative. Again, I'm just kind of scrubbing this in lightly right now just to get these darker areas in. I can refine all of this. And I don't like that, you know, this hard edge right here. It's a little too angular. I mean, there's things that I'm going to have to work on here. I like this little cloud, how it kind of comes up. Little saddle look to the bottom of it. And just getting some of these darks in here. I am going to warm that up just a hair. And I probably need to darken it too also, actually. It needs to be dark enough so that it's standing out, you know, over the blue of the sky. Haley's online. Hi there, Haley. Hola from Foco, Fort Collins. Haley's my daughter. Thanks for joining, Haley. Okay, so this cloud's in front of that cloud. So this looks a little rough for a little bit, and that's going to be that way. It's fine. As far as scratchy brush marks and all of that, I will come in and do actually a little bit of clean up and smoothing out with a soft brush to get some of the effects that I'm after here. But I want to get these major value patterns in here. A lot of leeway with clouds. And sometimes you really do get these kind of awesome little accidents that, I don't want to use that term too much, but you can get these cool little effects that happen just out of the blue, and better to leave them. I'm not sure. I'm going to have to break up this pattern here already, so I'm designing on the fly. But I'll talk you through my thought process on this as we go. So let's see. There really wasn't anything over here, was there? Maybe I'll make one up here. We'll see how that goes. Don't want to ad-lib too much. Okay, I'll get a little... Why don't I put some ground in here as well? And I think, well, why don't I'll just get some darks in here for my trees. And actually I want something way off for my tree. Got these trees off in the distance here to begin with. So I'm going to start kind of off at the horizon there. You're wondering why I have a violet. Well, I don't want it to be green because these really do need to set wet back way back there. And they're a little bit lighter, and I don't want it quite so purple. I'm going to add some orange to that. We're going to try this though and see just how well I can set these trees off in the distance. We'll do something like that. I added a little blue in there just to kind of mix it up. We'll see how this works here. So then for my trees coming forward, I can go ahead and bring those darks into the reds and yellows a little bit more, the green side essentially, but still keep them nice and dark. Okay, and I said I'd be putting maybe kind of one in here, I guess. I'm going to just paint these quickly and hopefully get a, kind of a likeness. And this one really kind of in the front, warm that up. And then the ground plane gets kind of simple, since it's facing up, it's going to collect more of that sky. It's going to be lighter. And it looks pretty green and bright because it's spring. So I want to have some of that, at least in this foreground. We're going to say that tree's kind of in front of this line because we can say whatever we want. Let's throw some of that pink in that green. I never used it last time. Let me just grab some of that, see what happens. See, pink, basically is a red, so it's going to neutralize the green being the opposite. Yeah, that adds some interest to it. I don't need to dwell too much in there. But what the heck. Sometimes just being brief and to the point is all you need to do. Get in. Now, I might not need to do anything more to this foreground, honestly. Might add just a little bit of interest here. Some lines to bring into the composition. Who knows, they could be mowed grass or whatever. Okay, now this distant hill back there, I'm going to blue down. So by adding blue, that reduces the ratio of yellow in there. Oh, and I got a little heavy on my alizarin permanent, but that's all right. And that seems a little dark, definitely is too dark. And I can add multiple little bits of color here, test something. If I don't like it, add something else, it's fine. But I'm not loving that yet, so I'm gonna keep trying to find it here. Try a little more of a ochre in here. See if that makes a difference. Whoop, okay. And then as that goes up to the base of those trees, I'm envisioning that, being even further away, so I'm gonna really lighten that up. And I think I need to make those trees a little better, so go back into those violets. See if I can't make those a little more part of that landscape hill there. I'm going to try to actually bring one a little bit forward even more. It's a little red though, isn't it? Try and neutralize that with some sap green. It's getting a little high there, so I need to work on this tree. That's not quite what I want, but I can shape these trees all with my sky as I get back here. Now I can take my palette knife, and what I'm doing here is just kind of smoothing out those distant trees and just have some fun here with that. Maybe even scrape some of that away. Don't be afraid to try stuff. And I'll come back into that later again. Cat, what type of day do I think that this is? This was late afternoon. Yeah. So you can see those, and I think when I took the photo, the cloud must have been blocking the direct sun, because you don't see a lot of direct sun on the landscape. Now keep in mind, I've just put in the darks basically on those trees for right now. So I might lighten those back up. We'll see if I get the effect that I want or not. But I actually kind of feel like I want these trees back here to be lower. Just scrape the extra paint off of there. And I'll bring a little green into this mixture. Okay. But then I, of course, need to do something here to make that ground plane in the distance look normal. Something just doesn't look right about it, right? I'm not finding that quite yet. It's a bit elusive to me. Well, that's kind of nice, actually. Maybe that's abstract enough. I don't need to really get into defining it too much there. We'll see, but I think that's going to be a nice setup for some lights to come in there. So let's begin. Let me start to add some of that sky in there, and then this will all come together. And with the sky, then I can make more informed decisions about the landscape. But already I like all the movement in here. You know, I like that. So let's see, at the base, we have really a gray-white of clouds. And at the top, we've got the blue sky. So I'm gonna make a decent pile of this, kind of a blue-gray. And let's see, this has to be, it can't be lighter than the clouds, because those lights on the clouds are pretty light, and I want those to stand out. See what I mean there? The highlights on the clouds. And this is a pretty neutral gray here. It is more on the blue side though. So I'm going to start with what I have here, and let's see how that maps in a bit. And it's going to be lighter in value than the underside of the clouds. So I have it too dark, I think. Okay, so I know I can go darker with the underside of those clouds too. And I know I want my tree at the horizon line to stick out. They're much darker. So I think I can go lighter yet with this. I'm going to neutralize it with a little more just of the chromatic black too. Okay. Yeah, that feels pretty good there. I think I'm going to get rid of this cloud or that tree there. What tree? It's gone. Again, I want these to be, you know, off in the distance. And so to be off in the distance, they're going to be smaller. Something like that. And I'll have to go back and reshape these trees and all that. That's fine. And I'm just going to come across here for now and do this whole bottom, and I'll put clouds on top of this. I can come back and paint the clouds a little bit, or the trees rather. Clean those up here. So what I'm really testing out now is what's the relationship between, you know, the land and the sky. And I'm going to start to get some of these clouds in here. Gamblin's chromatic black is really useful, isn't it? You know, it's a transparent, and it's made with two exact complements. So it stays really clean, and it's easy to push in different direction, temperature-wise. So don't be afraid of using black. Just, you know, black isn't something you should use to darken mixtures necessarily. Black should be a color choice in its own. Well, let's see here. There we go. Need a flat bottom on that one too. Okay, so before I creep up too much into the sky with this color, I'm going to start to modify it. And what happens as I go up? Well, it goes into the blue range a bit here. So I'm going to start to bring in a little blue, you know, and I want to make it noticeable. And I also want to start to draw these clouds in a bit, shape the clouds, I guess, with the sky that I'm painting here. So I'm pausing a little bit in between brush strokes just to find my way. So I'm drawing accurately also. Yeah, I don't like that cloud. If you don't like something in your design, you can paint over it. If there's too much paint, you can scrape that paint out and try again. And I'm painting pretty thick here. I'm getting some paint on. I'm not worrying about that. And just think of the sky as these little bands of color. And so as you're moving up, you're getting more into those, you know, you got to be changing your color mixture up here. Okay, so that's about as far as I'm going to go with that color blue. Now I really start to get into kind of a more the blue of the sky. I'll move up here and start to mix that up. Now part of the other thing about skies is sometimes to make those white fluffy clouds pop, you have to give them enough value room, which means you got to make the sky dark. Don't be afraid to go with a darker blue as you get into that sky. Now I'm just using a flat brush here, and it's a long synthetic, one of these Princeton Aspens. 6500F is the number on it. You know, I can use it as a, you know, I can draw little thin lines with it. I can do a nice flat shape with it, or I can do kind of roll it along and get this nice lyrical line with it. Nice versatile brush. So I'm going to just, you know, kind of come back here and try to get the shape of that cloud, even though I've only put in the shadow side of the cloud right now. So I'm going back to my outline somewhat. How's this working for everybody? Hopefully good. And then as clouds are above you, you see more of the bottom of them. So the dark shadow underside of the cloud, you see more of it for these clouds at the top of the sky or directly, kind of over you or nearly close to you. But as you look down further out toward the horizon, you're seeing more of the side of the cloud and less of the bottom. So that dark will become more of just a line, basically. All right, and then as I go further up here, I'm going to actually take this even higher to a really nice deep blue up here. And now I'm going to put in some of the lights of the sky here. So got a lot of blue, and I need a spot here for some white. I want to keep this white pretty clean. Get a good chunk of that going here. And, it's a relatively cool white, but I don't really want to go all the way to my white yet. So I'm going to kind of sully this down, gray it down a little bit, not pure white. And what this allows me to do then is it gives me room to keep those highlights in the clouds. So I'm going to just kind of scrub this in here. And I'm looking at my reference, but not being a slave to it. Like I said, that edge here up on the outer edge of the cloud is oftentimes a little bit darker. And then as I come around over here, I can show the light of that cloud. The cloud behind is lighter, and then the underside of the forward cloud. And it sets that apart. So the thing with clouds is, you put little patches of color down and you try to make something work, and sometimes you get lucky and sometimes you don't. So you just keep going back and forth with them. I'm kind of getting messy with that cloud up there because, well, it's just kind of a unique hodgepodge of shapes and stuff. Okay, I just kept going here, but I'm adding in the light on these clouds basically. And I've gone with a mid-tone white right now. And then we're going to do a little bit of mixing and blending here. I'm going to soften some edges once I get these colors kind of in here. I'm feeling the need for something out here too, really. Maybe that's all I need is just a little bit of a swooping line to bring some curvature to that. That's kind of looking cool. And then, as we go, got too much ochre in there. As I get out there toward the horizon line, I lose some of the contrast with the sky. The lights are a little bit lighter, but not hugely so. I don't want to make that contrast or you kind of lose the effect. And this is where I mentioned earlier, I think I'll just put in some of these marks as the highlights and indicate this a little bit, indicate these clouds a little bit, but not really get overly heavy on the modeling. And you'll see that as they recede into space, they're getting smaller. I have a little too much ochre in that mix there. Okay, now, I'm going to put just a few more of those little underdarks in there, off in the distance. This will just help kind of have some of those, cloud shapes off in the distance, defined a little bit by their shadow. Now that's a little blue, and that's fine off in the distance there. Some of those underside clouds will get a little bluer. Trying to really see what, look at and paint what I'm seeing here in the reference as far as how the clouds are a little bit unique. Okay. I noticed there's a couple spots here in my blues that I didn't fill in very well. And I could probably be better at the shape I'm putting in for my clouds too. So let me mix up some of those blues. Got some pretty heavy paint on here. Let's see, that kind of came down. That amazing when you put a nice thick stroke of paint up there, it makes a hard edge, and all of a sudden, wow, it just kind of looks pretty amazing. And so what you can do is use that to create some hard edges where you need them. I'm also adding some variety in the blues right here just naturally by doing that. I put in a little more chromatic blue there just now, right? So that's really popping, kind of interesting. I think what I'll do is go up to the darker first here and see if there's any additional dark highlights I want to kind of put in here. I mean, look at how that makes the light of the cloud pop. Let's see, I guess we kind of have that going up there. And I'm making some of these up, so that's all right. I do like that one stroke kind of coming up there from the cloud. Maybe I'm gonna bring one down here. Okay, and then I'll go to the lighter side here a little bit, and I'll go to my greener blue, my cobalt blue. Start to pop some of that in there. And let's see. Fun shaping these clouds after the fact with this mix of darker color. Now notice I'm darkening the sky because I really like how it makes that cloud pop out. but I do need to get that, lightened back up by the horizon. And what I'm doing right now is just really kind of drawing, just trying to get the clouds the way I want them here. Then I'll just lighten that a little bit more. I kind of like this clean blue right here, putting a little more of a clean version. I think I had put a little ochre into the lower sky to begin with. And I'm really liking the way that this cleaner blue looks on top of that. So I'm going with it. And now I can kind of carve in to some of these lower clouds here that I kind of just suggested in there to begin with. It's a back and forth. You'll notice I just obliterated a couple of those I wasn't thinking, so I'll have to clean those up. But how fun with clouds, you can just use your photo reference as a jumping off point and just really start to design and have fun and see what kind of cool shapes they're making. Just go with it. All right, so that kind of really sets it off into the distance there. So what can I do to punch that up a little bit in the distance? I think I'm going to maybe add a little of this pink to it to see what that does along the horizon here. That horizon seems a little bit boring to me. It's kind of fun. Just try it and see what... I'll just pop a little bit of that color in different spots here and see how that works. It livened it up. And I think down here at the bottom where these trees are, that's kind of a nice needed thing. I'll just bring a little bit of that up even further. Okay. So I haven't done any blending. I just put some blocky colors in. I actually kind of like it just like this. I probably shouldn't mess with it too much, but the stuff that's off in the distance here, I can smooth with my finger a bit there, and that helps to give the impression of distance. I got a dirty finger in there, so I can't leave that. I don't really want this pink to compete with the clouds though, so that mark there is too much. Okay, well, let's soften some edges and see what that does. Let me grab a softer brush. So when we look at a scene like this, not everything's in focus, and you could probably get away with softening a lot of these edges quickly here. So let's just see. If we were focusing on this cloud, for example, then some of these other clouds would be in our periphery and softened. Some clouds are just softened anyway, because there's a lot of soft transitions within the clouds, right? So I'm going to soften quite a bit here, and then I can always go back and add some more hard edges. And I'm going to soften some of the strokes in the sky too. Pull some of that blue into there and into there. Whoop, pull some of my white up, smooth that. This is all the cool stuff you get in the sky. Mix of edges. A lot of times what you'll see, or what I see, I guess, is that this underside edge of the cloud is oftentimes very soft, as is the transition into the lights in the middle of the cloud. So I'm going to soften all of those and just lightly blend in this sky together. And I'm wiping my brush in between, just by the way. Okay, so a totally different feel, right? You soften a few things and you get a very different feel to a painting pretty quickly. But then you decide, well, did I go too far? Not far enough? And then you can bring back in some of those, harder edges. This is pretty delicate down here because I'm ending up picking up a little bit of this, the dark colors on the horizon there. But I've got these really soft, subtle pastel tints going on in there, and I like that a lot. Okay, so I won't go too much more on the softening here. Okay, it's hard to stop, so stop yourself. But anything I've blurred kind of in the background kind of fits in with the way we see things, right? Things that are off in the distance are less clear and they're a little blurrier. So all of this reinforces the fact that we've got some distance back there. Good, excellent. I like that. So to make a painting out of this now, I've got my values in there. I feel like they're all in pretty good shape relative to one another. I'm going to spend a little more time here right now just getting my highlights in those clouds. And so just to make them, well, you can already see actually still in my painting the undertone that I put in of the ochre, kind of that warm undertone is still really showing through. And if I want my cloud here to really stand out, I squint at my reference and I kind of say, well, where do I see hard edges? And you know, I really don't see too many, honestly. So I'm going to lighten this area here, but not really put in really hard edges, so to speak. And I can define the form of this cloud a bit with that edge and this shape of light. Okay. And then I'm going to selectively choose which other ones to brighten up a bit. I'm going to put a little bit of bright in here. Just going to give that a sense of it being a cloud. And I need to soften that. You know, I can go back and soften more as I do it too. That's fine. Not giving myself any unreasonable rules here. And then I've got some, you know, a little bit cooler highlights over here on this cloud. Whoop. And as I go off in the distance. And I'll have to reestablish some of these that I messed up. And that light right there was way too light. And then likewise go back in and reestablish some of those shadow shapes. I guess that I would probably want to put in a little bit more and spend time on as I finish it up. But I don't need to do right now. But these are just small little shapes here, way off in the distance. And this is a pretty dark right here, as is a little bit of this guy. When you add these other color temperatures and stuff in here that just kind of get intermingled in, it's really pretty fascinating. You can get some neat effects. You know, the other thing is that clouds cast shadows on themselves. So let's say this part that's in sunlight here, the highlight on this cloud, if it's sticking out and it's rounded, well, the backside of the cloud is not getting the same. It isn't getting hit by the sunlight. So think about that. Clouds can cast shadows on themselves. Maybe you knew that already. Maybe you didn't. I did not. I guess I never really thought about it until I started painting and I was like, what's going on there? So I'm putting a little more time into this guy because I like him. That's really my main cloud there. And I can soften and turn that edge by softening with the you know, that badger hair brush like I did a minute ago. I can also mix a value that's in between, like I'm kind of doing right now, and putting that in. So there's a few ways to make a soft transition. And just noodling around on this really is, well, it's fun. It is fun. It's like a little make-believe world almost, honestly. And actually I can maybe even get away with a little bit of the pinkish in there. I don't know. Let's try it. Sure. You know, maybe that gives a little more suggestion of volume too. Just a note of that pink. And what it does then is it kind of integrates it with the pink I put in at the horizon line too. But then I got to put a little bit in all the clouds, you know, because they just can't just be one with a little bit of pink in there. Sometimes you can just make really cool little fast marks too, and those can be fun. All right, that's enough of the pink, except for right there. Seems like I got to go a little darker right in here, and probably right up here too. And then I can I've got this dark happening and coming around here, so I'm using it now as a compositional element to tie these things all together. And I'm working around my microphone, so I'm making some missteps here, but that's okay. Something like that. That'll work. Go back into my blue one last time and see where there's some areas I need to sharpen up. Well, what do you guys think about painting clouds? Is it interesting? Have you done it before? You think you'll try it now if you haven't? Whoa, that was a dark note. Did not need that. Okay, I think that's pretty much my sky. Pop that highlight in with just a little bit of a palette knife. And I want that to be my highest, brightest highlight there. Tell you what I didn't do, I didn't put any of the light really on those trees, so let's see about maybe a little bit of that. Now I'm not really seeing this honestly in the reference. Those trees are pretty darn dark, aren't they? But what the heck? Try to do something that's interesting with them. Go a little redder on this guy maybe. Actually, maybe that's a good ground color there. That's kind of cool. It really separated that middle ground, didn't it? Yeah, that's kind of nice. If I can lighten that up even more a little bit. All right, well, that really sets that as a foreground object against that cool background over there for sure. Let's see if we can push that background a little bit. So this is all about creating volume and space now. And by just putting some dots and dashes, I'm kind of indicating, you know, there's something more going on off in the distance. Hopefully. I don't know. I think so. Dana, let's see. Clouds are sometimes a challenge. Are all the edges soft? You know, I find it's nice if you have a mix. I painted these and I softened them with a soft brush and it kind of knocked all the edges back soft, and then went back in and selectively added some hard edges. I think that's a lot more interesting. But the way you can tell if you really want to paint from nature is just when you're looking at the cloud, squint down and look where you see a distinct edge. If you don't see a distinct edge, it's going to be soft. If you see a hard edge there, then paint it. I'm glad the overlapping clouds create distance. Yeah, exactly. Kind of a cool effect. All right, wrapping it up, guys. I really want that to be a nice, cool edge back there. And then on this shape in the foreground, I've got some red, yellow, and orange. See if I can really just kind of pop that. I kind of like that shape better before I messed with it. You know, that happens sometimes. It's all right. Maybe putting a nice dark at the base of it'll help. Yeah, I think it kind of did. I think you get the feeling of a light-filled day. You know, I have to mess with this one back here. I see, I like this little green bit I'm seeing. Trying to find the right green. I'll go into a little Viridian and see how that looks. Just some more indication back there that there's something going on in those trees. So I think that illustrates the point. You know, there's some nice soft edges back in here indicating that that hill and those trees are further off. You can soften edges quite a bit in clouds, and in fact, that's probably the preferred way to start. I'm going to knock a few more back here real quick. That didn't sound right. The edges, not brewskis. Especially as I get off into the distance here, I want to kind of just quiet those edges down. You know, this is a good example. Really soft edge at the bottom and inside of here, but then a hard edge right here to the sky. It's kind of fun. Okay, so I'll switch back the other camera quick, and that's, I'll call that one done. All right, thanks for joining me tonight, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that. Love your feedback. The likes always help on the videos, too. Coming up, I've got a workshop at the end of the week, and then I have some events I'm going to go paint to. The clouds, that was a fun painting, huh? So if you've done clouds or have questions, want to share your work or ask questions, let me know. I'd love to see some of your stuff. And I'll put a few reference images up in the community tab, because I've been just taking pictures like mad here the last couple days as these thunderstorms have been rolling into our community. So I'll wrap it up there. Thanks for joining, and I wish you a great week. Get out there and paint and take care of yourselves. Bye.